Welcome to the MindMill Podcast, where host Seth Marcus dissects and discusses all things impacting young adults. Peers, mentors, and professionals share intimate conversations on subjects such as entrepreneurship, exercise and health, music and art, the blessings and curses of technology, travel, and how to navigate adulthood in this age of information. We are the largest generation in history, and we dictate the future. The MindMill. Find your purpose, fuel your purpose.
Hello, and welcome to another MindMill episode. Happy holidays and New Year to you all. It's been madness, and I apologize for not releasing this episode sooner. There's been a lot going on in my life, good things mainly, but it's been difficult to stay on schedule with the podcast. However, I'm back and ready to make 2019 the best MindMill year yet. Today we are with Tirey, one of my closest friends and a freaking great guy. You may recognize him from the travel recap episodes where we discussed my extended Europe and Africa trip, along with the lessons learned from long-term traveling. We enjoyed chatting on the air so much, we decided to make it a more reoccurring episode structure. I love interviewing new fascinating guests, but there's something about a comfortable conversation with a good friend that really facilitates vulnerability and open discussion. Brian and I weren't sure what topics we'd cover in this episode, and that excited us. We each came to the table with some ideas to ask each other, turned on the mics, and went for it. In this episode, we dive deep into our personal meditation practices and how they've changed over the years. What has worked, what didn't work, how we maintain the daily habit, and how committing to this practice has dramatically improved our lives. I love this topic, not only because it's close to my heart, but also because it addresses the struggles we still face as regular meditators. Many beginners are intimidated to start a meditation practice. It's easy to get discouraged. This episode shines some light on how two young adults overcame that fear and how they use meditation today to improve their mindset, productivity, and overall happiness. Brian and his wife are also expecting a daughter in the upcoming months, and I couldn't be happier for them. We opened this episode spending a few minutes chatting about preparing for fatherhood and supporting a pregnant partner. I love Brian and am always grateful for his time and thought-provoking conversation. More to come with Tirey, but for now, I hope you enjoy this episode of the MindMill Podcast. Tirey,
yep.
Welcome back to the MindMill. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. Even though I sound like I'm sick, which I was sick all last week, I feel fantastic, man. I've been really good.
You sound almost back to normal. I've known you quite a long time, and you sound like you're on the tail end of it.
Honestly, I was so sick I couldn't even watch TV there for a little bit. I was so bad. Yeah. And it drove me nuts. I didn't realize how crazy it drove me to not be able to do something and be able to move and have my energy.
It's so infuriating for ambitious people. Just people who don't enjoy sitting around all day.
Oh my God, it drove me nuts.
Yeah.
I was really starting to lose it there for a little bit because I wasn't able to I wanted to get up. I wanted to take my dog on a walk. I wanted to attempt to exercise.
Yeah, wanted to help Sarah out, obviously.
Yeah, whatever I could do around the house, be productive. I think that's the biggest thing is at the end of the day, if I feel like I was productive throughout the day and I did a lot of things that matter, then I feel really good. But if I feel like I just sat around all day, I feel awful about myself.
Yeah, and going further into that, the days where you are very busy, but in the back of your head that you avoided doing something that was really important. You got a lot of busy work done, but you didn't get the one thing that's the most important done. Those are days that I feel kind of rough too.
Exactly. And for me, with those sort of aspects of my life, I always fall into this trap that I build up in my head that it's much bigger than it's actually going to be. It's always my paper tiger. And I'm always like, oh, I want to avoid that because it's going to cause X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to have to do this, and this could go bad. And then when you just tackle things and hit it head on, you're like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal at all.
Well, it's quite the opposite, actually. You think that you don't want to do it because it's so time-consuming or challenging, or it's going to be it's going to bring up a lot of emotional agitation or whatever resistance or excuse you're coming up with in your head. But usually it's the opposite that is the result. You start to get stimulated because you're doing something different, and the aftermath is that things become a lot easier. If you do the thing that you hate first, then the second thing is easy. Or sometimes you don't even have to do shit later. Sometimes the hardest thing you didn't even realize kind of crossed off 3 things on the list rather than just one.
What is one thing that is a common occurrence in your life that you're like, oh, I gotta avoid this, and you avoid it?
I would say there's a few categories.
Yeah.
One, and I think everybody can relate with this, is difficult conversations. That sticks with me throughout my meditation. It's what I find when I write down like goals for the day, and it's what I definitely avoid. And it's something that has that exact reaction when I do go through with it. When you break the ice with your friend that you've been fighting with or your employer, whatever the situation is, those conversations that are a bit strenuous, a bit anxiety provoking, those are the ones that I'll procrastinate, and it'll kind of build throughout days or weeks or however long it is. Or I'll swallow my pride, get up there and go for it. And most of the time it's a very beneficial experience when you do that.
And then before that, you're like practicing in your head. If they say this, I'm going to say that.
You overthink it.
Always overthink it.
I think the best thing, rather than coming up with the strongest game plan, I would say the better method to go is to make sure that you're in a good headspace.
100% agree.
You can write 12 drafts of the same email, but what you really need to do is not be an angry mess about it. Then it translates, it fogs your judgment, everything. You come in it with an angry headspace, you're going to share that energy with the person you're talking to. And it's going to bring the level of communication to a bit more aggressive or...
I always feel like it's not good to make any decision, whether you're super happy, super sad, super angry, any of those sort of feelings that you have that can be all-consuming. Making any sort of life decision or important conversations in that mind state is like, I try and avoid it like the plague. I'll put off a hard conversation if I'm not in the right headspace. Absolutely. Because it's that important.
We kind of just got off going as soon as we started this podcast because you and I have been friends for so long and we've been excited to do this. I wanted to take a second and kind of pitch this episode a little bit. So a few months ago, Brian interviewed me and we kind of turned the tables around for a travel recap episode, which ended up being a 2-part monster episode. And we had such a good time together that we wanted to kind of start up a regular occurrence of Brian coming in and we would either talk on topics specifically that are appropriate for the day or just kind of shoot the shit a little bit. And I think today is going to be the trial run of where we're going to head. So yeah. There's a lot about Brian Tirey that the audience does not know.
Man of mystery.
That's him. And there's some things that I know that Brian wants to ask me about the last few months since we've had a good chance to catch up. So that is the premise of today's episode. But I wanted to get back onto your topic because I think it's freaking crucial to life. When something happens, anything happens, you get angry at the dog for peeing in the house or your roommate or your wife or your boss. Something happens where you immediately are challenged and tried and you're angry. The natural tendency is to either A, get aggressive and you lose your temper and say what you need to say or react the way that you're going to react when you're angry, when you're super angry or super excited or what we were just talking about. Or the other option is to bottle it up and kind of hold on to it for a very long time and maybe in hopes that the perfect scenario is going to come about for you to have a heartfelt conversation with this person that is going to be low conflict and somehow work out. The real answer is right in the middle of it, which is you need to calm yourself down from the moment of emotional compromisation. You need to get back to center. And then you're kind of fighting the clock. Once you've gotten yourself over being angry about the situation at hand, then you're counting backwards, essentially being like, if you don't bring this up to somebody and have healthy communication, it starts to stew. It starts to be kind of like this longer term, you call it a grudge or something like that, where this longer form, slow burning anxiety and stress just kind of sits in you until you release that by talking to somebody. So
I feel differently. I feel that for me, time doesn't exactly entrap me in the feeling that I have towards that person or the kind of anxiety or the anger. Because that can entrap you, man. You can have resentment. Resentment can absolutely trap someone. But I think for me, having time, being able to mull something over, look at it through different points of view, I think is the most important thing. Anytime I've come up to a hard point in my life or a hard conversation, it's something that I look at all different angles, because if I'm angry or I'm happy or I'm skewed in some sort of way, it kind of channels and puts blinders on into one point of view at the situation. Whereas if I take a step back from that situation, I always say there's 3 sides to every situation. There's my side, there's your side, and then there's someone else's side. And it usually all lies in the middle. it's usually not my side, it's usually not your side, or it's not even the third person objective side. It's this weird thing in the middle that I usually come to. It's like, yeah, this is going to make the most sense, whether it's something that is a little bit harder for me to admit or whether it's something that's a little bit that I need to compromise on.
Yeah.
But it all comes with time for me. For me, that just takes time, and I don't let it entrap me. But I like thinking about those sort of aspects creatively and coming to a really good solution to them.
I think also everyone's coming from a different emotional reality too. Something that we've talked about, I know off the air a little bit, but there's the tendency to seek the truth. When you're trying to argue a point, debate your side, you want to prove it with facts. However, everyone is living in a different emotional state at any given time. So who's to say that we are completely centered at any one time? There's kind of like a homeostasis, but there's never just a dead center. I think only enlightened individuals can achieve that sort of dead center stillness, no anger, no anticipation, complete presence, right? So
Absolutely.
It's a matter of understanding where you are in that cycle.
And trying your hardest to understand where they're coming from.
That's a good point.
That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I work at all the time is like, where exactly is this person coming from? What are they angry about, upset about? What will make them feel better? What are some things that they need to compromise on? But then in turn, what are the things that I need to compromise on? And putting yourself in that person's shoes always helps. I think so.
In The Big Lebowski, there's a scene where Walter is in the car rambling and ranting about how his opponent in the bowling league had gone over the line and he ended up pulling a gun on him and telling him to mark it 0. And he was really angry beyond consultation in the car. And he's asking the dude kind of like self-servingly, am I wrong? Am I wrong? And the dude looks over at him and says, you're not wrong, Walter. You're just an asshole. And I think about that all the time in these types of situations. I think that especially like men tend to lean towards like the logical side of the argument. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to recognize the other side of emotional truths and like we said, like the 3 sides to everything. Just because what you're saying makes sense in your head doesn't mean that it's 100% true, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's the right way to go in this situation specifically.
Absolutely.
There's always compromise in everything, especially in relationships. I know that's kind of where we're talking about is our deep relationships. We're both involved in some pretty powerful relationships in our lives in different capacities. And something I really want to talk to you about is you're in a huge transition period right now, kind of a 9-month transition period, if you will.
I'm going to be a daddy.
Brian's going to be a daddy. When's the due date?
April 29th.
April 29th.
She gets the anatomy scan, and she'll be 20 weeks next week. Not that anyone's counting or anything like that.
Well, and also this will probably be released down the line a little bit, so she'll probably be 25 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm going to have to go ahead and edit all of this and do some dub overs. She will be, and then my voice comes at 28 weeks.
It was crazy. Last night she texted me and she said that she's starting to be able to feel the baby.
You're talking about your wife, not your future daughter.
My wife texted me and said that she is starting to be able to feel the baby.
Did she describe it at all? Like the
said it felt
feeling?
like gas. She said it felt like gas.
Felt like kind of like a moving fart.
Yeah. And she said that's what they say it starts to feel like in the beginning.
Interesting.
It blew my mind. I mean, It always blows my mind. We went, I think it was like about 5 weeks ago or something like that almost. We went for one of the ultrasounds, and the doctor's like, you want me to wake the baby? And I can see my baby on this screen, right? This little thing that's like kind of moving a little bit, but he's like, yeah, she's sleeping right now. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? He starts pushing on her stomach, and the baby starts waking up and starts moving its arms and legs. And it is like something out of a sci-fi movie, man. Because my wife isn't really showing, and he's just moving this thing across her belly, and I'm just looking at this screen at this little human being fighting for life, like moving its arms and legs. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I've never felt anything like that. Seriously, it was crazy.
Just wait. Obviously, I don't have any children, but I did witness my cousin's wife's birth of their 4th child. And the feeling, I know I've brought it up before. I think I brought it up on the Midwife podcast. That I did
Such a good
episodes.
podcast. I love that podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. But the feeling of there being 7 people in a room and then all of a sudden there's an 8th just emerges into existence. You're like, this is unbelievable.
I could cry right now thinking about my daughter's birth right now.
Dude,
I'm going to be an absolute mess. I'm going to be an absolute mess the whole entire day. I'm freaking out about it already.
I'm so excited to be a terrible influence on her.
Oh man.
I'm gonna spoil her and make sure she gets treats before every dinner. No, it's gonna be great. Have you thought about a name, or is that kind of TB?
Here's the thing with the name, man. And I've learned this. Don't tell anyone the name you're thinking about, because you know what? People start giving their opinions, and it turns out you don't really care about their opinions. So we had a name worked out.
Good rules for baby names and good rules for life.
Yeah, we had a name picked out, and I thought, all right, this is a pretty good name. And me and my wife haven't talked too much about names, but we had a name picked out, and we told someone, and they're like, ugh, that's not good. And all I could think was like, now I can't name my baby this because I know this one person doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And all I thought was, you know what? From now on, not going to tell anyone. And everyone asks. That's the number one question. There's 2 questions that everyone asks. 1, what are you going to name it? 2, does she have any cravings? Everyone's so interested in those 2 things.
I'm so glad you've thrown that out there. So now I will not ask the second of the 2 most boring questions to ask expecting parents.
Spoiler alert, no cravings.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. It's not exciting. But the name thing, we figured out, if anyone asks you, just repeat their name back to them. So if you were to ask me, have you thought of any names? I'd be like, yeah, we're thinking to name her Seth. You know, it makes the person laugh and it just stops the conversation right there. Or I say Sarah Jr.
That's fun. I was going to say, or Brian Jr.
Yeah, Brian Jr. or Sarah Jr. We just want to keep it easy.
Yeah, Brianna.
Oh, God, that is a horrible name. Oh, sorry to all the Briannas out there.
It's not a dig on Brianna, the name. It's a dig on a man named Brian naming his daughter Brianna.
That's true. That's very true. I love you, all the Briannas.
Which I think I might just call your daughter anyway when she's a little baby. I'll just call her little Brianna.
My one buddy says he's going to call my daughter Larry. That'll be nice.
Brian's got quite a plethora of friends that are very exciting characters.
Yeah,
that's
the way of putting it.
Never a dull moment in a Tirey party. So how are you feeling? I mean, she's in her 2nd trimester, right?
Yep.
How is it starting to shift in you as this, we've known each other for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. I don't know if we've shared our story. Maybe we'll get to that today.
We totally should. It's really good.
But how's your relationship developed with your wife? How is your thoughts on your life, your commitment to your job? Where's your head taking you these days?
Honestly, I think it started a little bit before the baby. And what started was, and someone told me this would happen, and I get it. The thing that happened is I just started relaxing. I really like being at home. I haven't been drinking as much or partying as much or wanting to go out. The thing that I really started to enjoy was just cooking with my wife and being at the house and taking care of our home. And like, I got really excited last weekend because we cleaned our basement. I was like, this is awesome. I'm having an absolute blast right now. You know what I mean?
I've been in that basement.
Yeah.
That must be a good feeling.
And I just never thought I'd have that feeling. And so it's just like something is changing inside me, but it was weird. I've had a similar change when I was traveling a lot. At the end of my travels, I started just getting this feeling of that I wanted to settle down. I don't know. And it's just something that kind of bubbled up inside me. And now I just have this like feeling of being a father and having a family. And I'm just really, really excited to meet my little girl. And also I'm really, really excited to see my wife as a mother. I'm so excited to see my wife in that role. I mean, that just makes me so happy to think about. So that's kind of how I'm feeling where I'm at. The other thing I'm kind of feeling is like, I have no idea what I'm in for. Yeah. It's like kind of preparing to like jump out of a plane. You can kind of watch videos and hear what people say about it, but you don't exactly know what it's going to be like until you're in that plane strapped to another human being and they're pushing you out the door.
That's a real good philosophy on it. So I was thinking, normally you see your friends get pregnant or something and you have your initial opinion as to like, oh, wow, like they're going to have a kid at this age, at this stage in their life. You're like, well, people have been unprepared parents for all of human existence. And so people have made it happen. You're going to make it happen. But I have to say, like, with you guys, it feels right. It feels that you guys are emotionally ready. You guys have been married for what, 4 years now?
4 years, yeah.
4 years, and you guys are just great people, and I can't wait to see how another little Tirey fits into the mix.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
It's interesting that it's almost like you're having a chemical shift, like your desire for immediate entertainment, going out, drinking, laughing with friends, things like that. Those are not as attractive to you as the quiet work, the spending time with your closest people, and kind of preparing your nest for a baby.
Yeah, that's
right?
totally true. You're 100% right. And I think the other thing that I'm preparing myself for is I know there's going to be massive sacrifices, and I know I'm going to get really frustrated at some points, and trying to minimize that on the front end and trying to mentally prepare myself for the things that I'm going to have to sacrifice to myself. And the thing that I always think about is it's hard for me to think about something that's in my life that's very, very important to me that hasn't involved any sacrifices, that hasn't involved any sort of hardship. Most things that happen in someone's life that is very beneficial and very impactful in their life involves some sort of commitment, some sort of compromise, some sort of hardship that they have to overcome. And I think this will be a big hardship, but I'm up for the task. I'm in. I'm okay not having sleep.
It's a total labor of love. I'm dog sitting this giant beast that's laying here in our studio right now. And yeah, it's tough when I'm meditating this morning and he's sitting outside of my room crying. And my entire meditation practice is focused on not being drawn to these wines. But yet, seeing him out there playing and giving him what he needs, like letting him run and feeding him and everything, it's so fulfilling too at the exact same time. The sacrifice is what makes the reward that much sweeter and that much more valued.
Absolutely. And I meant to ask you, how is your meditation going?
You know,
get me up to speed on Seth's meditation. And also tell me the life cycle of what you've gone through, because I know we've talked about it a little bit, and I know you're doing Headspace. Tell me how you got into meditation and kind of what brought you up to this point and where you're at right now. I want to hear the whole story.
We kind of got into meditation roughly around the same time. Was I a little before you, or you were a little before me, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. I was before you.
I
remember.
So.
I was like a month or something, like a month or two before you.
Yeah. So I've loved the feelings of meditation before I even knew it was meditation. I was introduced to a meditative practice through yoga, through physical movement matched with deep breath. So as I learned more about yoga, I learned that the asana, the physical movement of yoga, was originally designed to still the body, to work out the kinks of the body so that you could dive further and be more mentally prepared and not as physically distracted to meditate. So when I started hearing that and I started recognizing the mental benefits of the yoga, I realized that I'm effectively meditating. So what about like focusing on the meditative practice rather than just the meditative qualities of a yoga practice? Once I started really digging into that, then it was the real challenge of starting a new habit. Because to start a new habit of meditation involved breaking a lot of other habits in the morning for me, right? So in order to meditate, I need to have 20 minutes of uninterrupted time, which is difficult to do in a lifestyle where you wake up and you immediately get on your phone, you walk out the door, you grab coffee, you go to Starbucks or whatever. So there was a specific change that had to happen with my meditation practice. So I started with Headspace, and I spent about maybe 6 or 9 months just using the free Headspace 10 minutes, the same 10 ones over and over again, but just using them whenever I could. I did it in the sauna at the gym. I would find time in the car, not driving, but, before I would go into a meeting or outside of a coffee shop or something like that, and started to notice the differences of a meditative practice. And then I think, honestly, it was when you and I started getting into like the buddy system, that Headspace.
That definitely helped.
The app. I think it's such a funny sort of competitive backwards way to get into meditation, right?
Yeah, and it's like keeping your other friend accountable.
Right.
And I would check on your status all the time.
Yeah. How many days in a row has he done? What's his average minutes? So all of a sudden, that's my completely kind of like surface level, ego driven incentive to
Yeah.
meditate. But you know
Hook,
what?
line, and sinker. It was great that they have that set up in the app.
I don't care. If you need to use your yang competitive side in order to tap into your yin introspective side, then that's great, because most people just don't do that. It's so hard to tap into that quiet spot. I mean, look at our entire civilization right now. We are so afraid of being bored. It's outstanding to look around and just to see, or excuse me, not outstanding, but it's overwhelming to see the amount of people that, rather than having genuine interpersonal connections with other humans or being still, reflecting on, digesting on all the stimulus that we have on day to day, they block it with more stimulus.
Yeah, it's funny. At my house, when people come over, we don't watch TV. It's like an unspoken rule in my house that when friends come over, anyone comes over, we don't turn on the television. Because I don't want to sit there and just watch television with someone that's really important and we have time to hang out. I play records.
Yeah.
And we listen to records, and some people, I can tell it makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It makes them feel uncomfortable to just be sitting there, and sometimes it'll just be silence. We'll be talking and stuff like that and catching up, but sometimes there'll be a lag in conversation, and it'll make people so uncomfortable. They'll like pull out their phone, or they'll do this, or they'll start asking about the television. And
What type of TV is it?
yeah, can you get the game on? Like, no, like I don't
Yeah.
have cable. Like, I have no idea how to do anything on this thing. So I totally get what you're saying. People don't like to be bored. The other thing that I noticed that's kind of funny is that people always want to know. It's hard for people to have something in their life that they don't know about and that they don't feel 100% like they conquered something. And I've been thinking about this lately, and I don't mean to get too much off subject, but it comes up like death. It freaks people out to think about what happens in the afterlife. And people make up all these different things and these prophets and these religions to soothe themselves for what's going to happen in the afterlife. And I was thinking about the other day in my meditation, because I listened to The Art of Happiness, and the Dalai Lama actually does a meditation every single day on dying. Every single day he thinks about his own death and
remember your mortality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinks about impermanence and how this is not going to last forever. And it freaks people out to think about that because they don't know what's going to happen on the other side. And I've started to think about the fact that it's like, that makes me feel very comfortable that I don't know. I've started to grow really comfortable with things I don't know about. And I don't feel like I've conquered, and also feeling very comfortable that I'm bored sometimes. And that I really want to reach for my phone and check on this and check on that. But like being able to actually meet that with some sort of consciousness of knowing that that's going on in my brain and just breathing and knowing that it's okay. That's all right to have that sort of tick. And that's all right to have not know about certain things in my life. And I feel like meditation has really helped me with that. I don't feel like I was that person even just a year ago when I was starting meditation.
That absolutely kind of fulfills where I was going with where am I at in my meditation, is beginning to see, starting to become a little bit more exponential in a way of just your ability to observe your state from moment to moment. And I think that so many people get just terribly discouraged to the point of not adopting the habit because they just assume that they're not good at meditation because they get distracted. They're not good at yoga because they're not flexible. They don't think that, yeah, that's why it's a yoga practice. It's a meditative practice. You do yoga to become more flexible. You do meditation to become more patient and to become more present. So people write it off like, I'm not good enough to make the varsity team, and I don't want to be on like the JV team, so I'm just not going to play the sport.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll tell you right now, meditation 100% is all about distraction.
Right.
All about distraction.
It's funny, you start to continuously lower the bar as you get serious about meditation. You're just like, you start off being like, okay, well, if I meditate for 20 minutes, I'll obviously be like levitating and be one with the universe by the end of the 20 minutes, right? That's my expectation. A month into straight meditation, you're just like, I just want one peaceful moment in this 20-minute session where I just breathe and I let it all settle for a second. You just realize that like once you hit that where you tied up in distractions, anger, to-do lists that running through your mind, anything and everything that's plaguing your thoughts, and you just get one exhalation where it all settles for a second. And then it'll inevitably come back in. There'll be something new that'll just fly in, a back pain or the reminder that you didn't send this email yesterday. It'll all come back. But you realize that 1 second that you released that thought and let it be still for a second and just sat with it, that's like doing a pull-up or a curl. You just
100%.
strengthened your muscle a teeny bit.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that, because I remember where I was and what I was doing when I experienced that moment. I was up in the mountains. It was 4th of July weekend last year, and I was just sitting there, and thoughts come up, and you just go back to your breath, and thoughts come up, and it feels, sometimes you get bored with it in the beginning. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so sick of this. You know what I mean? But you just stick with it. And I think one of the things that I always tell people that are just starting meditation is you never, ever judge your session. You never say, this is an easy session, this is a hard session, that was a good one, that was a bad one. You never do that. You just take the session for what it is. And once I started to get that in my head and thoughts would come up and I'd be frustrated that these thoughts kept coming up, the more frustration that I would have would add another layer onto the meditation that would make it harder for me to get to where I need to be. Rather than just being like, oh man, all these thoughts coming up, this is interesting. Go back to my breath. Mm-hmm. And I reached this moment of stillness that you talk about. And people say it's a lot, it changed my life. And I just felt so amazing after that. The thing that's funny for me in my meditation is it took me time to build it into a habit. I feel like there's layers.
Always.
And I did it every day for 30 days. And then I remember coming over and talking to you and having a conversation.
I remember when you had this breakthrough.
And you told me, you were like, I have this friend of a friend, and he did this every day for a year. And I thought, you blew my mind. And I was like, oh my gosh. That is cool, man. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then I went home and I thought, I can do that. I can easily do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I did it every single day for a year. Just that right there helped me with the habit. And I reached some amazing states, and it's done some amazing things in my life. But now I'm in this really special area that I crave it.
You need it. You need it in your life.
I'm so unbelievably happy that I have this craving in my life now. I'm trying to get more of these cravings in other positive aspects in my life. But where I've reached in meditation has just made me so happy that I've been able to have this thing that I look forward to now. And I think every time my meditation, I make sure to have this thought, because I feel it all the time, is I just feel so blessed and so fortunate that I'm able to have these moments right now in my life of silence. I thank everything around me, and I just feel so appreciative that I'm able to have this moment with my eyes closed, and I'm able to reach a point of stillness, even just for a millisecond. I don't mind. I'm just so happy that I'm able to have these moments of silence in my life each day. I have huge gratitude towards that. And I think that's where my meditation has led me today. Is what I do now is I actually focus on my chakras. And I'm not schooled in chakras. I don't know much about chakras. I don't believe that they're the center of the universe that revolves around this, or I don't know. You know what I mean? I know that there are points in my body that I like to focus on, and I like to kind of clear out. So my meditation now is for 5 minutes. What I'll do is I'll actually tighten my upper body. I'll start lower and go all the way up to my crown. And while I'm doing that, I'll be inhaling, and then I'll exhale, and I'll release anything that is like troubling me, anything that's murking my waters into getting to where I need to be. Even if it's positive, even if it's something that's really, really good, I had something really positive happen at work, and it's just, I'm so overwhelmed with joy, I still let that go. I let everything go, and I tighten up, and I breathe in, and I breathe out, and I let it all go. I do that for 5 minutes.
In the beginning?
In the beginning. Okay. I do that for 5 minutes. And I have this thing called Insight Timer. If anyone wants to check out the app, it's amazing. You can actually set bells and little dings at certain times within your meditation. So for 5 minutes, I do that. And then for 2 minutes, I think about my heart. And I think about someone who I don't have the best feelings about, or someone that kind of troubled me. And I just give them love. And I just think, I need to emit this sort of love and compassion, because it's something that I struggle with. And so I know that's something inside myself that I need to work on. So I just sit there and think about my heart, and I think about all the people that are around me in my life that I love. And I think about even the people that need more love. Someone that might have wronged me or done something that, like you were saying before earlier in our conversation, you have resentment or you have this sort of anger towards that person, and it'll entrap you.
They don't come first to mind when you're thinking about who to give love to, right? It's easy to be like,
Exactly.
I want to give love to my wife and my future daughter and my
Yeah, and like my dog. I love my dog. Yeah,
Exactly.
who doesn't love their dog?
Exactly. The client that burned you $3,000 or your ex-friend that really treated you terribly. It's a much more difficult practice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard. And it's hard also to get lost in things too. Because you'll think like, I need to love the one person that's just bugging me right now. Even if it's a political figure or something like that. Think about it. Think about this person, even though they do X, Y, and Z, and it affects these people in a negative way. That person, like, you still have to have love and compassion. If you can love and have compassion for that person, it levels everyone out onto a human playing field. There's this story that in that book of joy that the Dalai Lama, he had a friend who was taken as a political prisoner, and he was tortured. I think he was tortured for like 5 to 10 years or something like that when the Chinese took over Tibet. And finally he was freed, and the Dalai Lama finally met back up with him. And his buddy said, I hit some really hard times when I was in captivity. And the Dalai Lama said, absolutely, I can only imagine what you went through with your captives. And the guy said, the biggest struggle that I had is I started to lose compassion for the people that were torturing me.
Wow.
And for him to sit there and meditate every single day and try not to lose any compassion and love for the people that were torturing him every day, keeping him in captivity for 5 to 10 years. I mean, if that guy can have compassion and love for those people, I think I can have love and compassion for the person that cut me off in traffic the other day. So, not to get too off subject, I meditate on my heart for 2 minutes, and then I meditate on my voice. And this is something that just personally I've been working on, is that I need to speak more clearly. Verbally, it's very sophomoric to say, I just say what I think, and I'm just being honest, and I just tell people like it is. I used to think like that, and
You're focusing more on mindfulness and thinking before you speak.
Absolutely.
And learning to listen. Is that what you're saying?
Learning to listen, learning to speak in a more clear and concise way, learning to communicate with the people around me, with the world around me in a very concise way, clear way, educational way, in a way that can hopefully spread some sort of positivity. Because I know in my life, I am a very witty person, and I can come up with some really funny things to say and cut people down. And I've done that in the past in my life, and I feel I accept it, whatever, it happens, you know what I mean? It's probably something that I did out of...
Did you do it maliciously, or did you do it to be funny? And sometimes it came off as like hurting people's feelings.
Both. Sometimes I would do it just because it's like, I just thought of this, and it is hilarious, and I'm going to say it, and everyone laughs. And...
I think it's just part of the young male community, and especially coming from where we're from, because I think every guy has their own little flavor of it. But I think in Cincinnati, where we're both from, because I met you here in Denver, but you're from Cincinnati, and I met my other friend, Jake Holshoe, who's also been on the show before, from Cincinnati, and we all share this kind of like quick ripping of each other, but it's all out of love. But there is a threshold, and people who may be dealing with other things, it can get tenacious pretty quickly, or it can get aggressive.
Well, what I figured out, the main thing in this, and what I figured out throughout everyone, is you need to have a certain level of trust in that person that you're ripping or is ripping you. You need to have a certain level of love and trust in that person that you can go there. If you don't have that, they're going to be hurt. And sometimes it's a little bit like pushing someone off the cliff that you might have just met, and you kind of take a dive and you're like, jab someone a little bit. And some people have probably been hurt by what I've said, because I'm really good at dicing someone up, because I've been diced up my whole life. I come from a big Christian family where like my mom's one of 6 children, and they all had kids, and it's like this huge group of cousins and aunts and uncles, and all we do is dice each other. Ever since I was little, my uncles would be jabbing me constantly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it just built this huge callus to where, like, now in my life, like, I don't care what people say to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can't control what someone else says to me, but I can control how I interact with that person and what I say to other people. So that's definitely something that I spend 2 minutes each day meditating on and focusing on how I can be better at that.
I've always admired your very systematic approach to the meditation. You've very much committed to different practices and implemented and changed and stayed true to those changes. And I admire that a lot.
Thank you.
Because for me, as much as I've done it, and I think I'm probably about 2 or 3 years deep now into this regular practice, at the core of it, I'm still focusing on the same stuff I was focusing on the first day I meditated, which is allowing the thoughts and coming back to and focusing on the breath. At the end of the day, that's still the core focus for me. Now, I've flirted with some of the other practices that you've talked about, generating a sense of warmth and light in your body, projecting that onto loved ones, people that you're neutral with, people that you are not getting along with or even could hate. I believe I'm going to butcher it. I believe it's meta meditation, but I don't think so. I don't want to go down that road. But that is a technique, and it's something that I do really enjoy, of cultivating a strong, building up a reservoir of love in my body so that I can deliver it energetically somewhere. And it's become extremely valuable to me when I hear terrible news, when I am hearing something hard from a friend, or even good things. Because I've been doing this meditation, it triggers me to not be distracted, to not think about what I'm going to say next, but more to take a second and be like, I am sending this person love, right?
Oh, very recently, I've deleted a lot of texts or emails that I was about to send off. And I'm like, hold up. Mm-hmm. Remember, this morning, this was your focus. You need to get it together.
Right.
Like, just having an honest conversation with myself as I'm reading over an email or text and saying, like, this could be perceived in a very negative manner and possibly hurt someone. And I still need that also of being able to just focus on my breath. So basically what I do the 5 minutes of tightening up my body, 2 minutes on my heart, 2 minutes on my throat, and then 2 minutes on my mind. And then after that, I do 10 minutes of just meditation. Of that, when that's all done, now it's time to just focus on my breath. And the thoughts come up, they always come up, and that is part of it, and that's the beauty of it. That's what I was saying before. Meditation is distraction. Straight up. Meditation is distraction.
It's sitting with it rather than letting it silently steer you throughout the whole day,
100%. Right? And everyone that says, like, oh, I get distracted too easy, that's awesome. That's great. You need to be comfortable with that. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just growing with that comfort is what I've found. And that's where I'm at right now with my meditation. Who knows a year from now what our conversation will be like, of where we're at with our practice.
Well, let's keep bringing it up. I like that.
Yeah.
I like the idea of seeing how this...
oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that.
especially because we're still journeying into the unknown, right? And people who are listening to this who don't have a meditation practice, they could see it as like, well, these guys are obviously, they were already triggered or they were predisposed to be better at meditation, and it's just freaking false.
Yeah, I was awful at it.
There's nobody, at least in the American cultures, that was brought up in a way that facilitates a beautiful meditation practice. I can't think of anybody from any generation that is wired to be a good meditator.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I try and do it every day. I mean, obviously, I have days that it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. But I think it was like a month ago, I had a session where I had this thought in my mind that I like could not get rid of. I literally just had to stop and like stand up and kind of walk it out. It was something that just came up inside me, and it was like, I can't get rid of this. And it was just terrorizing my meditation. This is like a month ago.
This is one session, or it kept reoccurring?
Yeah, this is one session. Something just came up, and it was just, I couldn't get rid of it. It was like a bad fart. Yeah. You know, straight up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had to flutter my eyes open. I had to like step back. I had to rub my face. I had to get up and like walk around. I was in a hotel room at the time. I was like walking around like, man. And I was humbled by it, because it was like, you never are going to become an expert at meditation. You're never going to be the best meditator in the world, because there's always going to be thoughts that come up. It's just part of being alive. It's part of being a human being. And some of these things that come up in our life, we just have to grow comfortable with. And so I was pacing around my room, and I came to the conclusion, I was like, you know what? I just need to be comfortable with this thing. This thing's coming up in my mind. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It'll go away eventually, like anything else. And it did. And eventually went away, and I kind of just got back into my meditation and finished out another like 10 minutes or something like that, where I was like, I just need to kind of extend this meditation, make it a little bit longer. But you're never going to be perfect at it, ever.
No, and that's not the point. The point is not, I've been meditating or dwelling on this quite a bit recently, is that it's not, you can't overestimate the power of a goal, right? You need goals. You need to set goals, and you need to set them higher. But there is something to think about when you get into goal seeking only. When your mind is set to either achieve a goal or not achieve a goal, there is this kind of win-lose attitude. And what really is the key ingredient for permanent success is not seeing it as a temporary goal that is to be achieved, but more of like a system that is to be implanted into your routine.
Wow,
right? So
that's powerful. I never thought about it like that. You're 100% right.
So in a lot of ways, it's like, okay, my goal was to do a year of meditation, right? That's a really great goal. And it's not something that you should take lightly and not shoot to achieve, but that's not your real goal, is it? It's a great way to start, but your real goal is to become someone who meditates every day.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you're 100% right.
And you can apply that to almost anything. Your goal isn't to be the owner of a extremely successful company that you founded. Your goal is to be a person that works every day to benefit their company. Someone who has the work ethic and has the leadership qualities to lead people to success. It's important to say that we want to have like a $50,000 a month or something like that, and to set quotas and to have goals that people are shooting towards. But the ultimate underlying reason for setting those goals is to augment the system for better success.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, kind of blew my mind. A little speechless. That's fantastic.
Don't be speechless too long on a podcast, my friend. But I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I'm very goal oriented, and I think that a lot of people in our culture are, right? We want to lose 20 pounds. We want to break the new sales record. But really, it boils down to day in and day out habits. And that's what I've been focusing on a lot, is the concept of never miss twice sort of thing. Like you said, everyone misses a day of meditation or a workout one of these days. But the idea is you miss it twice, and now you're starting to build a different habit.
Yeah.
If you are a daily meditator and you miss a day, it's like, okay, that happens. I had an early alarm, I had an early meeting, and I just didn't get to my meditation today. But if the next day you do have the time and you choose not to do it, or you start to build the habits that are not what you're hoping for, like I said, for exercise, that's really easy to apply. You work out 3 times in 1 week, and you haven't been working out, so you're super sore. And then the next week, the first day, you're like, oh, I'm still sore, and I worked out a lot, so I'm just going to take this day off, let my body recover, and then I'll hit it tomorrow. And then the next day, it doesn't happen, and then all of a sudden, you worked out for a week, but you didn't work out for a month. And ultimately, what you want is to be someone who works out regularly.
Yeah, and I think the thing that always helps me when I'm coming up to something like that is I look at the pain points. What is going to suck, and what is not going to be fun for this new thing that I'm about to bring into my life?
Yeah.
And I like to focus on those and hit those head on as much as I can and say, well, this isn't going to be very fun about X, Y, and Z, and this is going to be kind of hard. For me with meditation, the thing that was hard was like, I think this is with everyone, when am I going to do this? My day's already full, and I found that if I have a set time that I do it each day that fits perfectly into, I got to leave for work at 8:30. So if I sit down at my chair at 8 o'clock, I'm perfect. And I always think about that. Whether I'm getting up kind of late, or maybe I slept in a little bit, or I need to brush my teeth real fast, and I check my clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a couple minutes till 8 o'clock. Like, I got to be in that chair. And that's something that helped me to be able to be like, this is going to be a pain point for me. And I straight up know it.
Let's talk about how you implemented that into your routine, because obviously that's a huge part of establishing any habit, is finding the time and the motivation to do it, because the motivation is not going to come. There's going to be 99% of the days that you want to meditate, you have no desire to. you're trying to establish a habit. And that, by definition, that means that you're going to have to suck it up most days and show up even though you're not feeling meditation is what you have time for or what you are emotionally ready for or is a priority.
Oh,
right?
And get ready, because if you're meditating for 10 or 15 minutes, it might suck the whole time. In the beginning, I still have sessions that are like, that wasn't ideal. And I try not to judge the session like I was saying before. I try my absolute hardest, and I think everyone should do that, is like, don't try and judge your session on whether it was good or bad or anything like that. But it's so hard. And I think that's the hardest part is the beginning. And like you said, having that dedication. But you know what? Having that buddy system or having someone or having a goal in your mind and being competitive in it is what got us into it. And I think you need to kind of know yourself to a certain degree and be like honest with yourself and say, X, Y, and Z is going to help me do this. Being super competitive is going to help me do this. Having someone there that's keeping me accountable is going to help me do this. And you just have to kind of, at a certain level, be honest with yourself of what's going to really get you to where you need to be. And for me, it was having that time and the place that I do it at every single day. And
is that the first thing you do? Walk us through your morning.
So what I like to do, this doesn't always happen because I'm not a perfect human being, but ideally what I do is at night, I plug in my phone upstairs in my office and I put it on airplane mode. And then I do that at a certain time at night. It'll be like 8 o'clock at night or something like that, or maybe 7:30. That's like, okay, I'm done with my phone. No more phone for me tonight. And I just focus on playing records, reading, or something like that. And then I go down and I read my book before I fall asleep. So when I wake up, I don't roll over and just start checking my phone. I do that specifically so I don't roll over and check my phone. So I get up, brush my teeth, and then I head upstairs, and that's the first thing I do. I sit down at 8 o'clock in my desk chair, and I have a little altar set up on my desk, and I start my meditation. I just get it going. The thing is, the timer is on my phone, so I don't want to start opening up my phone and then work emails and this text message, and then you're off the rails. So
you keep it on airplane mode until?
Ideally.
Can you operate the app without on airplane mode?
Insight timer. That's what I use. I used to use Headspace, but now I just do silence. So I just do Insight timer and I get it going. And it's hard because me and my wife share our office, and sometimes she's got to go in there and grab stuff or anything like that. But I've worked really hard to not let any of that bother me. Any distractions, whether it be exterior or interior that are going on, don't let any of that bother you. And I think that's an important part of meditation, is not letting anything bother you.
I think that's kind of misguided advice because it's kind of contradictory to what we've just been talking about. It's like things are going to bother you. What we're doing is structuring, and the practice is recognizing that this is bothering you and allowing it to roll.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
That's life. Yep. Life is going to be someone driving past you and spraying a puddle over you.
Right.
These things are going to happen. It's not a matter of like not letting it happen.
No, yeah.
It's more of like, here it comes and I'm going to let it pass rather than I'm not letting it come.
The other thing is not layering anything else onto it. If my wife's going to come in the office, have her come in the office. She says sorry or something like that, or maybe she bumps or lets something go. Let it just go. And not add another layer of being frustrated with it, or why does she have to come in here right now? Or like, why is the dog barking? Or what's that alarm outside? Or anything like that. So yeah, that's what I do. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I sit there and I do my meditation. I think it's like with this 5 minutes and the 6 minutes and the 10 minutes. And then I do a minute of rest. So it's about 22 minutes of meditation that I do, of silence. I think anyone that's starting out, I think doing a commitment of 30 days has always helped me. I did a recent commitment of reading every day for 30 days. It totally changed me. And now I read a lot. For some reason, reading just kind of fell out of my life there for a little bit, but I committed to 30 days every single day of reading at least like 5 pages. And it just, for me personally, it just does something in my habit, in my mind, that is like, builds this structure that I tend to really start to enjoy.
Yeah. Well, the concept of, do I have the book here? Yeah. The discipline equals freedom mantra is, it comes into play very, very often in my life, and it sounds like it does for you as well. If you spend your life waiting for the motivation to hit, you're going to wait a long, long time. However, if you are like, okay, for 30 days straight, I am going to start my day with meditation. Again, it goes back to like the goal isn't to hit the 30 days. The goal is to set up a regular meditation practice.
Yeah.
You're giving yourself a time of day, a location to do it, the amount of time you're going to do it, and the longevity that you're going to try this. And the more that you are structuring and creating your exercise, the higher the likelihood of it happening. And even more so that like success of that is going to not only give you the feeling of gratitude and fulfillment that you succeeded in your goal, but even on a deeper level, you have shifted your personality in a way to become somebody that is now a meditator, that is now a healthy eater, that is now a better husband, or whatever the ultimate goal is of what you're shooting for. And so it's such an interesting concept where like we live in this country that touts freedom all the time, and we want to have the freedom of choice and the freedom of speech, and we want to be able to choose any movie on Netflix at any time that we can watch it, whatever.
Yeah.
But when we have too much freedom, it's like a test being like a multiple choice with like 3,000 possible answers. Imagine if you're taking the final for your class and it's one question and 3,000 multiple choice answers. You are going to lose your freaking mind. And that's how we deal with our life on a day-to-day basis if we don't give ourselves the structure.
Or my worst fear that I always run into, I go get chicken wings or something like that, and they got 20 sauces to choose from, and they all sound delicious.
Exactly.
I'm the worst person at that. I'm the absolute worst. I'm always the guy that's asking the waiter or the waitress, what do you like? I don't know. This all looks delicious to me, because I'm not good with that.
Well, in the same time, you also have to step up in a little bit. I think we've all dealt with the conversation of like, what do you want to do for dinner, right? And the worst thing that people say is, I don't care, right?
Yeah.
Just throw something out there. Just start to limit, start to put some parameters on this completely open-ended question. It immediately helps the situation, although it seems natural that people want to like not have an opinion. They want to be completely neutral. Yeah. When it's a little bit easier to just have an opinion and be open to the idea of that not being the absolute answer of what's going to happen. So I think that setting up a discipline like meditation is such an important practice, especially if you don't have any discipline in your life right now, any self-discipline. Yeah. I think a lot of people that listen to this show and that we know in our peer group, they have the discipline to get up and get to work, right?
Yep.
This is something that I've written about and that I'm talking about, and something that I'm very passionate about, and the things that I'm doing right now in my business are leading towards solutions in this world. But the idea that we commit so much to our jobs and to our relationships and yet not to ourselves. So many people out there, they will never miss a deadline. They won't be late to a happy hour. They would never let a friend down, but yet they consistently deny themselves the commitment to exercise or to read or to show up or to do things that mean a lot to them personally. Those personal goals come way in the back burner to their commitments to their jobs, to their relationships, to the other external factors in their lives. And I think that's so disruptive to human growth.
Absolutely.
To be leaning on what others are expecting of you rather than what you're expecting of yourself.
But it takes a certain kind of person to have that sort of view. You need to have a certain level of self-awareness of what is exactly going on to even start to take a step like that. Let's say someone doesn't have that sort of self-realization inside themselves. How do they get that?
It goes back to exactly what we were talking about earlier. You don't go to yoga because you're super flexible. You go to yoga to become flexible. It's the same type of thing. I think that people are a lot more malleable than they think and that we think. I think that everybody assumes, including that person, that this person is going to be morbidly obese their entire life until they make a change. And it's the same that you can apply that to whatever. I'm not saying I have an answer because I've always been gifted with a bit of ambition, a bit of the desire to achieve my own goals. I have a bit of that just genetically in me, but I've worked my ass off to become kind of like an athlete in that realm rather than just an amateur.
And how did you do that? Like, what would you say to Seth 5-10 years ago or something like that was struggling with this? Would you have some words of advice for a younger Seth that would get him to where you are today in a faster, more effective way?
I think it all boils down to implementing something into a system rather than being consistently looking at goals. I think the big transition for me was in college when I was doing all of my classes and everything that other people expected of me, but I was also running my own band and working with other musicians, and that was what I cared about so much. So I had something that was my own, that we had, it was special to us, and we wanted it to succeed. So for the first time, we had really cultivated something that we had possession over rather than I need to pass these classes. This is what Clemson University expects of me, right? This is what my high school needs of me in order for me to get into college. Up until that point, it had been like passing the grade, putting in the hours or whatever. And now, for the first time, I realized how beautiful it was to have something that I really was so passionate about, being the band. And then those 4 years being in that band, it taught me a lot as to the actions and the dedication required to further your own goals. And then throughout my 20s and into my late 20s and now early 30s, it's been a lot of learning about showing up and being there on the days that suck.
Yeah, my dad always says over half of life is just showing up.
It's so true. Meditation practice, never more important to do meditation than when you are just screaming at yourself saying that you don't need to meditate. You wake up in so many different ways, and then when you sit down and meditate, you realize that that cacophony of thoughts and emotions is really just kind of like, I don't know, usually between like 3 and 5 different categories. Like I'm either just really tired and sore, or I'm anxious and I've got a lot on my plate today, or I'm a bit groggy and bitter towards something or someone. There's always a million different examples and names and identifiers to those feelings, but the feelings at their core are usually only a few different things. Just realizing that we are creatures of cycle and that you're not going to wake up dying to get to work. But by showing up and being that person who does the work, whether it's for the company or for yourself, that's the type of personality that is someone who achieves their goals, which is, in my opinion, that's what success is achieving your goals. It doesn't have anything to do with money or physical gain. It's setting what you are looking to achieve and becoming that and being happy in it.
Absolutely. Well,
Brian, we only scratched the surface on all the subjects that we kind of got together to talk about today.
Like usual.
Yeah, I think we learned that lesson from the last episode, which I think we budgeted an hour and a half and we did about 3 hours. So With a friendship like ours, we can go on forever. We had some really interesting topics to talk about, and we kind of went deep on one topic, which I really enjoyed. I think that a lot of people listen to this show because they're interested in a mindfulness practice, and we really just honed in on not only the specifics of how we make it work, but also like what we're dealing with now from the beginning into a later stage in this journey of meditation. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, man. That was cool just to get into the nitty gritty, because I think that a lot of people, they get lost in the details.
Yeah.
And we kind of answered a lot of those more subtle questions that rise up. So whether it's Headspace, whether it's Insight Timer or YouTube, whatever the hell it is, get breathing out there.
Yep. And reach out if you guys ever have any questions or anything like that, or anyone struggling with something or trying to figure out how to build this up. Use this as a resource and keep you accountable.
Yeah. Brian, is there anything you want to promote or share with the audience before we get off for the day?
Not really. I just appreciate being on the podcast. You know, I've always been a huge fan. I always enjoy these conversations. I think, like you were saying before, we got into some really great stuff. I'm excited to come back again, touch on some subjects. If you want to reach out, I guess the best way to find me might be like Instagram at Tirey. Other than that, that's about it, man. Thanks for taking the time. This is so much fun. I love this.
Obviously. I love this project so much, and the timing of the show release may be a little different than where we are right now, but I've been so inundated in building this other side of the MindMill, which I just cannot wait to share with everybody, and that will be coming extremely soon.
Amped.
And some of these interviews I need to do a little bit more preparation for, just so I know that I'm ready to ask the right questions and to be the right amount of curious. But when I talk to you, Brian, it's just like we can go in any direction. It's super relaxed, and I love it, man. So more to come for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Cheers. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the MindMill Podcast. If you loved this episode, check out some of the other MindMill episodes. They're all free and available at themindmill.com, as well as all major podcasting platforms. Also, please take a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's incredibly easy and really is the best way to support the show. Stay tuned for more MindMill episodes coming down the line. I'll keep them interesting for you, I promise. Take it easy.